Good evening and welcome to the Your Life Matters show, your gateway to a world where health, wellness, and the pulse of humanity converge. Get ready to embark on a captivating journey filled with enriching conversations, inspiring stories, and insightful perspectives that will leave you feeling empowered and enlightened. Sit back and enjoy an entertaining and educational experience that celebrates the essence of health and well-being. Because in this space, your health matters, your wellness matters, and your life matters. Please welcome our hosts, Steve Hodgson and psychotherapist Dr. Eric L. Davis.
On today's show, we're diving deep into a topic that's close to our hearts, mental health and well-being. Now, you hear us talking about taking responsibility for your life all the time. And that includes taking care of your mental health, folks. It's every bit as crucial as your physical health. We're talking about your emotional, psychological, and social well-being, the whole package. And let's be clear, this isn't just an American issue, this is a global one. Mental health conditions don't discriminate based on geography. The World Health Organization says depression is the leading cause of disability worldwide. But here's the catch. There's a whole lot of stigma around mental illness. People are afraid to talk about it, ashamed to ask for help, and that only makes things worse. We need to break down those walls and get real about mental health. Education and awareness are key. Let's talk about depression. It's more than just feeling blue or having a bad day. We're talking about a serious mood disorder that impacts every aspect of your life. Your sleep, your appetite, your energy levels, your relationships, your work, you name it, depression can mess with it. And the worst part, it's more common than you might think. This isn't some rare disease, folks. Millions upon millions of people around the world are struggling with this in silence. They're hurting, they're lost, and they don't know where to turn. And that's the tragedy. They don't have to suffer alone. Now get this. The World Health Organization estimates that a staggering 5% of adults worldwide are dealing with depression. Think about that number for a second. That's 5 out of every 100 people you pass on the street, 5 out of every 100 people in your workplace, maybe even 5 people you know and love. This isn't a small problem, folks, it's a global epidemic. And we need to start treating it like one. We need to stop brushing it under the rug and pretending it doesn't exist. It's time to shine a light on this issue and get people the help they desperately need. Women and depression, a complex relationship. Here's another layer to this whole thing. Women are more likely than men to experience depression. Now, there's no single reason for this. It's a complex interplay of biological, hormonal, and social factors. Women often face unique pressures, juggling careers, family responsibilities, societal expectations, and it can take a toll. They're also more likely to experience certain life events that can trigger depression, like hormonal changes, pregnancy, and postpartum depression. We need to be mindful of these gender differences and make sure women have access to the support and resources they need. The unthinkable risk depression and suicide. Now here's the harsh reality we can't ignore. Untreated depression can have devastating consequences, including suicide. When someone is trapped in that dark place, consumed by hopelessness and despair, they might see suicide as the only way out. It's a heartbreaking tragedy, and it's a stark reminder that mental health is a matter of life and death. We need to take this seriously, folks. We need to be aware of the warning signs, we need to know how to reach out for help, and we need to create a culture where people feel safe asking for it. Hope on the horizon, treatment works. Now for the good news, depression is treatable. Even in severe cases, there's hope. We're talking therapy, medication, lifestyle changes. There's a whole arsenal of tools available to help people reclaim their lives. But the first step is breaking the silence. We need to encourage people to talk about their struggles, to seek professional help, and to support each other on the road to recovery. Your mental health matters. Look, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're struggling to cope, if you're having thoughts of suicide, please know that you're not alone. There is help available and there is hope. Reach out. Talk to a trusted friend or family member, call a crisis hotline, see a mental health professional. Remember, asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. Your life matters and you deserve to feel.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Your Life Matters Show podcast. I'm Steve Hodgson, and of course, we have with us Dr. Eric Davis. Dr. Davis, welcome to this evening's show.
But
You got to admit, it's better when the videos actually work than last week with us standing there staring at them and wondering why aren't they working. But we figured out. I told you there'd be a few glitches the first week, but listen, tonight we have a very serious topic we want to discuss. And as you saw a little bit in the beginning, we're going to be talking about things like mental health, depression, loneliness, suicide. Now, probably every one of these things we could do a separate show on. I mean, there's enough information for all of it. But I just want to start off, the series with a general topic covering most of that. And I want to just give you a couple of facts, and then we're going to go into some questions about it. As we've been saying, depression is a common mental disorder. Globally, 5% of adults suffer from depression. That number might be different from when I looked it up, too. More women are affected by depression than men, but a lot of people say it's because they have to deal with men. But depression can lead to suicide, and there is an effective treatment for mild, moderate, and even severe depression. Now, as it said in the thing, this is something we have to get out into the open. In your practice, how common do you have people coming that are suffering from depression?
all the time. I mean, all the time. There's, we kind of in the helping profession, you always hear anxiety and depression kind of thrown together. And I mean that I would say that just about every person that seeks therapy is going to have, some depressive symptoms of some kind, typically.
Why do you think that is?
I think it has a lot to do with, the world in general, constant changes. There's something that we call adjustment disorder, is what a person experiences when, their life is upended or there's major changes in their life. And an old mentor of mine used to say that his definition of depression, and I've always remembered this, he said, it's when a person has to do too much for too long. So doing too much for too long equals depression. And I thought that was, there's two types of depression, really. There's situational depression, which is, if someone close to you passes away, or there's definitely, an event or something that you're grieving. But then there's clinical depression, which is, chemical. So.
Now, why do you think, well, the show's about Your Life Matters. Why is treating depression so important to someone's health? I mean, what are some things that can happen if you don't treat that depression?
I mean, in any number of things, health concerns, stress. When we don't treat the things that are going on, basically what happens is they start to spill over. I always say that that's why self-care is so important. Because you have to take care of yourself. You have to give yourself time. You have to take time to process things happening in your life. And when we don't do that, number one, we're prolonging, the inevitable as far as grief and loss or past events that are going to have to be dealt with at some point. But I always say that it's kind of like a bucket. If you fill a bucket to the top with water and then pour some water on it, it's going to spill over. And so part of self-care is, emptying our bucket, so to speak.
But where did the stigma come from for those people that need help, okay, and are afraid to get, I mean, I know a lot of people that, go see a psychologist or psychiatrist for that, and they look at you and they say, what are you, crazy? Okay, I'm not going for therapy. That's insane. Where did that stigma, do you think, come from?
I'm not certain as far as where it, began, but I think it's like anything else that involves asking for help. Something that comes up a lot in, group therapy for mental health and addiction is, basically like the different ways that we're socialized, especially as men, we're taught, I'm being extremely general, you don't show emotion, you don't ask for help, you need to stand on your own 2 feet, etc. And then we kind of laugh about it in the helping profession because then so I'm brought up that way. I go to, I have things going on. I go to therapy and I'm immediately told to do the opposite, ask for help, share your emotions, all those things. So I'm not sure where it came from. That's something I'll have to look into.
Well, if you think about it, I mean, we came from a generation where men didn't even smile in pictures. Okay.
Yeah.
And, I used to do that with my father-in-law. We used to take a picture, he would take off his glasses and get ready for the picture. And all of a sudden, the big smile went down. Look, and it's like, smile. No, don't. We don't smile. Even my dad, I guess, is a little like that as well. Doesn't want to smile. And I don't know, I guess it goes back to the joke about, the guy who won't ask for directions when he's lost. Don't worry, no, I'm a man. I can take care of this and stuff. And it's sad because these people really need help. Okay. And that stigma needs to go away, folks. That's all I can say. There was a time, even in my own life, like 30 years ago, where I actually saw a psychologist for probably spread out over like 4 months and stuff, and going like twice a week to him. And it was to deal with depression, a little bit stuff that was going on in my life. And there's no sin behind that. I didn't, like walk into the clinic, trying to hide my face or, put a bag over my head, or something, the people that were in there were normal people. And it's the same way, what I guess I'm trying to say, it's the same way as walking into the doctor's office for, maybe you're going to have to go for a colonoscopy or something. There's no shame behind it. It's what we have to do. And I'm hoping that people that are listening, if you're depressed, if you find some of the stuff we talk about tonight that you're suffering from, get help. I'm going to say this a number of times during the night. And actually, in a little while, I'm actually going to give you phone numbers to dial, like dial 988 on your phone, okay? And you immediately can speak to somebody. It's so important that you talk to somebody before you go and do something that you're going to regret, the people around you are going to regret. Now, we live in a complicated world right now. Heck, we talked about some of that last week. It affects us emotionally, physically, even financially. Now, how can listeners differentiate between everyday stresses and maybe something that's a little more severe, some kind of mental health concern? How do they tell the difference between those?
I think a good, what I always say is a good rule of thumb is if we all know how we feel. Like I've lived in my body since the day I was born. So is everybody else. So, we have that front seat view. And if you feel like things are off, or if people that care about you are noticing things are off, I think a lot of times that's a pretty good indicator that something's going on. And it never hurts just to have, a lot of therapists offer free consultation, and so, like you were saying earlier, I hope people realize, please don't be afraid to reach out, and just consult with somebody to talk about, well, is what I'm feeling just a normal reaction to stress, or is this something deeper or not? One of the big differences as far as when something, when there's, an actual issue, is you can't think yourself out of chemical depression. You know what I mean? You can't just, if you could, you wouldn't be depressed, so getting that help and making those connections to get better is the key.
Okay, something you said there sparked a thought. You said chemical, when there's a chemical, part element of it. Explain to people what that means, because some people just think, it's just in my head. But there is a chemical aspect of that that's happening in your body that we're not aware of.
Yeah, it's so most issues as far as behavioral health, the best practice is typically a twofold plan. And what I mean by that is, um, a medical doctor will prescribe medication, do those things to get the body, corrected. And then we work on not only learning about the issue, whatever that is, but also developing coping skills in therapy. And, that really is the ideal way of treating a lot of things. Now, as far as depression goes, they're making progress. We can talk more about it, but like ketamine therapy and some other things, there are very promising, a lot of promising research going on right now in regard to some of those other chemicals and things.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm typing to the room inside of YouTube there. What are some of the symptoms that we're depressed?
So
I guess that's something we left out.
Yeah. So there are several, but feeling exhausted, feelings of hopelessness. I had a client tell me one time, and I thought this was a good way of kind of explaining what being depressed feels like. He had bipolar disorder. And what would happen is when he would enter the, depressed phase of that, I remember asking him, I asked him, I said, well, tell me what it's like, like how would you describe how you feel? And he said, that, the grief that you feel or the sadness when you lose someone close to you, he's like that grief that kind of, it never fully goes away, but it does subside some with time. And, he said, it's like that, only it doesn't subside at all, or it feels like it doesn't. And I thought that was pretty interesting. But I think that's a big, a mindset of hopelessness, exhaustion, irritability, trouble sleeping, there are a lot of different signs.
Yeah, I was looking on here just on the sheet. Let's see, excessive guilt or low self-worth is one of the ones they talk about. Hopelessness. I mean, just about what the future is going to hold for them.
Yeah.
And, changes in weight and appetite have a lot to do with that as well. I'm a senior now. Most people don't believe me, but I really am. And I live in a senior community. And there are people that I see that just stay inside all the time. Now, I mean, someone like me, I don't go out roller skating, obviously, for health reasons. The cannula doesn't go that far for the machine. But, I've seen some old people just come out, and I will drive by or something and wave to them. They'll just wave, but they go back inside again. And they just don't want to open up to other people, because they may have lost their husband or they may have lost their wife or something on there. And, one of the things I'm hoping that people also that are watching the show and watch the show as after it's up there is, this might not be our problem we're talking about, but you need to be aware of that problem, of what the problem is, in case you see it in one of your friends or relatives or your loved ones. I mean, we need to reach out to them, don't we?
I mean, I think, connection is everything. Really, I mean, when it comes to mental health, or just life in general, I would even say, connections are everything. I mean, when we isolate, think about how isolating could, exacerbate the symptoms of depression. Like you're saying, if I don't ever leave the house, if I, really just don't do anything. I was talking with a good friend of mine recently, and he was talking about how working out, even just going to the gym on a regular basis can really help with depressed symptoms because, you're releasing endorphins and, working out, being active makes us feel good.
Well, you're also socializing with people if you're out. You know,
Yeah.
they're even if you don't talk to the other people in a gym, they're still there, and you're still amongst people, and you feel like you're part of life. I mean, I know we go to Planet Fitness, Jen and I, and yeah, I mean, I don't sit and talk to everybody that walks by, but yeah, I'll nod. You know, if somebody says hello, you know, say hello. And sometimes if you're on the treadmill, you know, and the person next to you is sweating, you laugh. You might even say something. It helps pull you out of what you're doing. And you're right, physical stuff helps. I mean, even for me, I have, you know, little weights and stuff in the house that I do every single day because it keeps you mentally. And I think that's so important too. It keeps that mental health going. And I think if you're mentally awake and alert, that's going to help bring you out of some of that depression.
Yeah.
But what do you say to somebody that, let's say, you know, John Smith, you know, is your good friend, but you happen to notice John's like really down. He really doesn't want to go out any place anymore. And so how do you approach that person and say, hey, you know, can we talk? Or, you know, I mean, how do you get them to approach the topic of getting help? I mean, I got some friends that say, I can tell them, you're freaking crazy. You better go seek help.
Yeah.
Okay, but you can't really, if someone's really seriously depressed, that's not the approach
Yeah.
you want to do with them.
I think a lot of times, you know, just asking someone if they're doing okay. You know, I think of different clients that I've had, you know, through the years, and I would, you know, see a change in them or something. You know, it's like there are noticeable differences from before. And a lot of times it's just simply, you know, it's not, hey, we have to talk about this right now. It's, you know, I'm extending an invitation to talk about this if you'd like to. If not, that's okay, you know. But I think it really, I think that's an effective question a lot of times, is just saying, you know, I've just noticed that some things are different with you, and I just wanted to check with you and make sure everything's going okay, you know, and that you're all right. Making sure that people know that there are resources available or that they have support. I mean, that's a huge first step, you know.
I mean, I always say to people, you know, you need to talk to somebody, you know, just pick up the phone. Just not today, folks, so my phone isn't working. But pick up the phone and give us a call. And, you know, I don't care what time of the day and night it is. Call me. If you need to talk to somebody, call me. You know, and I mean, that sort of segues into the question I was going to ask next. Um, you know, we see people that have just lost a loved one or a friend. Okay. I mean, come on, you know, at my age now, it's almost scary because when I was doing websites, when I had Street Smart in Indiana, yeah, I did for a funeral home that was around the corner. And when I started to realize I was older than some of the people that were passing away, a bell sort of went off someplace and said, well, we've entered a different phase of life now. Okay, because you're going to see more and more people you know that sadly that will be passing away. But when that starts to happen to us and we do lose a loved one, okay, what should we do? What's some strategies we can do to maintain our mental health during those times?
Well, the first thing is, you know, obviously take time to grieve, you know, et cetera, but try not to lose, you know, your basic routine, you know, if at all possible. Try to keep as much the same as you can, you know, as far as, so like if let's say I work out on a regular basis, that could be something that, you know, if I make sure that I'm doing that for myself, it helps keep me connected to regular life. Something that I've found that can help with grief especially is finding things that we can do that are healthy, but that also honor that person's memory. You know, I know that a lot of people have found that to be effective also, and to you know, help them to feel better and remain feeling connected to that person.
Yeah, you got to always remember the person that passed away, the last thing they wanted you to stop living as well.
Yeah.
And the best way to honor someone, like you said, pick up something, do something to honor that person, not just sit back and crawl into a shell a little bit, go out and, and vocalize it. There's no sin in saying, I'm one of the strange people that I heard the line in a movie, and it's so true. I can't repeat an emotion. Okay, so if you told me and said so and so passed away, and I won't use any kind of names because it's a jinx, but if so and so passed away, okay, I might get upset. I might even cry over the loss of the person. Now, when I get to the funeral, I've already passed that emotion. I'm already sad that, don't get me wrong, not that I'm not sad the person passed, but you're not going to see tears in my eyes. Yeah. And actually, when my mom passed away was a prime example of that. It wasn't to the very, very end after the cemetery when I don't even want to go into the psychic stuff that happened there. But, I didn't go in there and cry. I already took care of that when I learned that she had passed away. So, but don't bottle up to certain people. And we talked about it earlier. Don't bottle up that emotion either.
Yeah.
The worst thing to do is to keep that inside of you. Let it out. And if there's people around you that laugh at that and say, "Oh, look, he's crying" and stuff like that, then you need to get new friends.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Now, you see, we've talked of sad results of depression, okay? But one of the things we didn't go into yet is the suicide aspect of it. Because, I mean, you tell me, how does someone get from being depressed to suicidal?
I think it usually it has to do with the feelings of hopelessness, or also a lot of times basically like an inability to imagine that life could ever be okay again, and keep in mind that when we talk about suicide and things of that nature, that's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. It's never the answer. No matter what's going on, that is never the answer. And like you said, if someone's in crisis, they can pick up any phone and call 988. They'll immediately be connected to a helping professional. But it's important that we remain open and transparent about, how we're feeling, what's going on with us, et cetera. Like, no one has to go through things alone. Mm-hmm. And I wish more people in the world, took advantage of that and took advantage of the resources that are available.
Before I answer that, as I said, we're going to say this a couple of times, that I urge you, if someone's listening and even have contemplated suicide, may not right this very second, but, last night was laying there thinking, it might be just easy, just end it all. Okay. And that's a bad thought. If you've gone down that avenue and gone down that road, okay, I really implore you, we both implore you to pick up your phone and dial 988. Now, the 988 hotline is a national, most comprehensive mental health crisis service and can provide crucial help to those in emotional distress. So as I said, if you're even thinking about suicide, don't wait. Take steps to act on it now. 988. It's unlikely to call law enforcement. It's unlikely you're going to call law enforcement without your consent and stuff. I should say that. The person on the other end of the phone will not judge you, but instead is there to help you and most importantly, help yourself. And remember, if you're in emotional distress or suicide and you can't remember 988, 911. Okay?
Absolutely.
So you could go to they'll take you to the nearest emergency room. Okay, a medical professional can give you information and can help save your life. Because here's what I wanted to say about that. With what you had said before, I think when you get to that phase where you're thinking, I'm going to just commit suicide, screw it, just end it all right now. There's not, you don't go through that thought in your head of, okay, wait a minute, maybe I should call 988. Okay, because you've already surpassed that point, that rational point of saying, I need to get help. And I think, and it's so sad. And, I'm going to tell you, and I only talked about it once with Tim, and I'm not going to go into too much, but I've been there. Okay, and I did try to go that extra step. Luckily, I had been talking to someone who knew something was wrong and got people there right away. And I'm here today because of that. That was a long time ago. I look back at it and say, where the hell was my head during all of that? Okay, I cleaned up language because we're on YouTube. But it can happen in a flash. I mean, I went from one day being happy to the next day of just saying, that's it. And that's not a good place to be mentally. I know that for a fact. It could never happen again. Like that, I can guarantee you. Because afterwards, you get to realize that, it's the end for you. But look what you left in your wake when you decided to walk away. Okay. And there's always a way for it to get better. And, I'm proof of that. I'm very happily married now for 22 years and stuff. And, you can get better from anything like that. Actually, even longer than I was actually married after that in between too. So I want you, if you're thinking about suicide, okay, or even have given it a serious thought. I'm not talking about saying, I just might commit. No, I'm talking about if you sat there and said, it might be better, problems are all gone in one shot. Now is the time to pick up 988 and call. Why you're not in that mode that I was just talking about? Because when I can tell you for a fact, when you get to that point, you stop thinking rationally. I mean, it's sad, but you really stop thinking rationally. I mean, I can't even put myself back in that frame of mind because I don't understand it. How me, jolly old me, would have put myself in that situation. But I did. Am I embarrassed by it? No. Okay, it was, it's the same way of, ending a marriage to me and stuff. I'm just glad, like, even out of marriage, I came out of it alive, and, and I was not afraid to seek that help afterwards. I mean, I didn't need to, but I went, and I saw this guy for, it was like 3 or 4 months, and I feel fantastic, after that. I mean, we talked out the reasons why I even got to that doorstep. So I really want people to pay attention to that. And I want to go through here some sad suicide facts. Okay, and this is terrible. But do you know that suicide is the 11th leading cause of death in the United States? Okay, and think about that. We talk about cigarettes and all that other stuff. This is something that's really preventable if we're alert of it, and aware that we're feeling that way. It's a serious health problem. It has a far-reaching impact. It affects people of all ages. Now, we'll even talk about that. Maybe it's a good point to stop. Childhood suicide. Teens that can't take it anymore. They start cutting and everything else. As a parent, what are some of the things that they should be watching for to make sure that their children aren't getting to that point?
Well, so we need to definitely, as parents, watch out for bullying. Try to know what's going on in your kids' lives. It's not always easy to do that, but keeping an open line of communication going with your children. Another thing is if there's a big shift in behavior, whether that's at school, you notice someone who's typically very social starting to isolate, etc. So I think that, suicide is definitely, I just say it's the worst of the worst,
On the average, it says here, there's 132 suicides every day.
Wow.
And in this is a 2021 stat, there were an estimated 1.7 million suicide attempts.
Wow.
I mean, think about that, folks. I, and I can see that with what we were talking about last week with politics, actually starting to push some of that, where people feel that either, they're stuck with the current political situation. Hey, let me leave politicians out. That, they're stuck in that, or, they're not going to be able to get past what some of the things that are happening with the current administration. Then there's some that are on the other side that can't get over all the stuff that's happened in the past 4 years. So, we have to watch there. We talk about it, but I know that I have friends that just have left social media because of that, because it's depressing to them. And I don't think we suddenly realize how depressing it is. I mean, we talked about last week. We said, okay, how to stay away from political discussions and stuff. And I caught myself this morning on Facebook commenting on something, and I was like, what am I doing? Okay, I'm doing exactly what I talked about last week. That I should. It's just so tempting to get involved in it. And the only time I actually get involved in it is when I know something's wrong that someone's saying. And I don't do it to say, hey, moron, this or that. It's like, maybe you didn't see, this is what it's all about. Because I've had people tell me stuff like that, and I backed away from it. I've actually removed my post so that it doesn't get spread and it's not true. There are things now they're talking about, the NRA and rifles and handguns and everything else. But know that in 2021, firearms accounted for almost 55% of all suicidal deaths. So, I mean, that's, it says here 94% of adults surveyed thinks it can be prevented. Suicide rates were higher in adults 25 to 34 or 85 years of age or older. Okay, I want to stop there as an old person, okay? I want to stop there. Why is the suicide rate so high for our elderly population?
It goes back to, the hopelessness. I think a lot of times older individuals may be dealing with, financial constraints or fixed income, those sorts of things, and may feel trapped, or you just never know what a person's dealing with. But I think that probably has something to do with it.
I'm looking here, and I have perused back on my notes, actually, as you saw when came in with camera problems, okay? So if you have noticed that this camera is not as clean as the camera last week, it's because I couldn't get my other camera to work here. But it's funny because it says the highest suicide rate was amongst white people, Caucasian people, which had over like almost 16%. Second highest was American Indians or Alaskan Natives. Lower rates were the African American community or even Asians, Down in one was 8%, the other one's almost like 6.9%. Do you think there's a reason for that? I mean, is it societal or is it just?
The long and short of it is it's everything, So there's personal factors, there's cultural factors, there's everyone is different to a degree, and so it's interesting. I've always found it interesting, what the research, says about that, as far as rates of things, something that we haven't touched on, but, and I'd have to look up the actual statistic, but the rates of suicide, I think it would be quintuple. I think they get 5 times higher when people have gambling addiction.
Right. Yeah.
So I mean, and that's a significant, increase. And that goes back to there again, it's, debt. It's that crushing debt, that insurmountable debt. And it's that hopelessness.
I was just going to say hopelessness, that you're not going to
Yeah.
ever get out of the hole.
Yeah. And the reality is, I was just talking to a client recently about what I challenged them to do was to take a look back through their life. And I asked them to pick 3, really difficult things that they had been through, and basically to take a snapshot of what their thinking was at the time, and of course, all 3 of the things that they came up with were, it was the fiery, bloody end, everything that was never going to get better. They had all these, obstacles in front of them. But when they look back after the fact, they can see where everything fit together exactly like it probably should, and they could see that, well, yeah, that situation that I went through really sucked, but had I not gone through that, that wouldn't have led to this other thing that has been great in my life. And it's, don't lose sight of, the gift of the future.
Right. Because nobody knows, well, nobody will go religiously, but really, you don't know what tomorrow holds for you.
Yeah.
I mean, you really, really don't. I mean, you might have entered Publishers Clearinghouse 3 weeks ago, and all of a sudden tomorrow you wake up and you find out, you won, $50,000 a week for life. I mean, you don't know what tomorrow holds. And that's the thing about suicide, is that if you do suicide, there is no tomorrow.
Yeah.
Tomorrow is your family getting together and making funeral plans for you. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Now, I've been blessed because I have some amazing friends, including you, Dr. Davis, that's sitting here. When I was doing the show back in October of 23, when I was interviewing, I think I even interviewed you during that time on authors. And one of the people that I interviewed was someone who was a paranormal friend of mine. I met through the paranormal and mutually through another friend of mine, Scott Tepperman. His name was Tim Mailing. Now, we did an interview on Tim's book, and he gave me the okay. I'd asked him if it was okay that if I used this clip from that interview. So the clip is self-explanatory, but I wanted to take a second and play that clip for you.
Early 2007, and I just didn't think there was a way to get through this, a way to move on. And I remember sitting in my bathroom with the largest knife I had. And I went through friends and family one by one, and I came up with reasons why it would be better if I wasn't here. And I'm sitting in there sobbing and not really in a good frame of mind. What people don't understand about people that are suicidal is that your brain takes over. And it's a very dark place. It's not your normal self, and there's no rational thought. None.
Well, let me tell you, just to interrupt you a second, I've been there, which you probably don't know about me. I've been there. Didn't have the knife, but I had a bottle of pills. So I know, and I just want to say this before we go any further, because I'll forget to say it if we don't. If somebody's contemplating suicide or something when they're hearing this and stuff, seek help now.
Yeah.
I'm even told if you dial 988 on your phone, you're able to get help immediately, or text 741-741, and somebody will contact you. Don't go without help, because what you're about to hear Tim say now is true. When he just made that statement, your mind takes control. So take it back from there.
I'm sitting in the room, in the bathroom, and I feel something on my arm, and I look down, and it's Murray. He's rested his chin on my arm, and I looked down, and I saw those beautiful brown eyes, and I put the knife in the sink, and I crumpled to the floor, and I held him, and I just kept telling myself, "You can't do this to him. If something happens to you, what happens to him?" And in that moment, he was no longer a dog. It was not dog and owner from that point. It was father and son. And I lived every single day of my life trying to find a way to thank him. We were inseparable. And every day I would pick up his ear and I would whisper thank you into his.
So, oops, here we go. I don't know why the video doesn't want to close. Okay, there we go. For some reason, the video didn't want to close there. But, Tim is one of the greatest guys you want to meet. I mean, I really, really, not just saying that because he let me use the clip and stuff. I was honored to meet him a few years ago when we were at one of the Paracons that we had a booth set up at, and Tim was there. And I've spoken to him many times, but it was the first time I actually met him in person. And I remembered the name of the organization. We were talking before the show. It's called Portograph, Pawtograph. In other words, not photograph, but portograph, the paws of a dog for pooches. And what he does is he travels when the Paracons are going on. He travels and gets a shelter in the area. That's a no-kill shelter that needs money. And they raise money for that shelter. Usually by the end of the thing, they've raised $4,000 or $5,000 for it. And, as I said to you, I'm almost sure his number's over $200,000 he's raised since he started doing that. And that was all because his dog, Murray, which he talked about there, was a shelter dog that he had gotten. And even if you noticed in that clip, he had pictures on the wall behind him with that chubby white dog. That was Murray. And he would take Murray to all these photographed pooches. And Murray passed away a couple of years ago, but he's replaced him with another shelter dog and stuff. And it's exactly what I'm saying. He, at that point, you've already thought out, who cares about A, B, and C anymore? I only care about me right now. And you can't let it get to that point. Even back then, think about October 2003, I was talking about 988. Okay. You need to pick up the phone and call that. Even right now, if you're listening to the show, okay, if you've given that thought, you put it on pause. I'm going to be, show will be there. Okay. You come back to it anytime you want. Just tell your friends and more people like it. But seriously, it's time to do it. And I mean, I really want to thank him, for allowing me to play that again. I'm not sure, I didn't mind my part of saying it there, but it looked so much better when I was actually coloring my beard. It actually was a much blacker beard and makes me look a little old now. But, he's married. He has a beautiful wife by his side. He has 2 loving children with him, and, he's happy, and my heart's with you, bud. If you're watching this, it really, really is. But again, we're not going to repeat ourselves, but 988, or even in the worst case scenario, 911. Okay, pick up the phone and call. Okay, let them take you to the ER. Okay, let them evaluate you and stuff. Or even if you don't want to call 911, you know what? Get your car, drive over to the emergency room, and walk in and tell them, I've been having thoughts of suicide. Okay, and no one's going to say, why you're here or something. No, they're going to help you because they understand the importance of it. Now, I want to move on because as our time is moving on here, We want to talk about social isolation is one of the things. Um, One of the things I'm seeing a lot since COVID hit, since that pandemic hit, and lockdown of society, as I call it, where we were all told to shelter in place, um, social life changed. Okay, it was disrupted big time. I mean, I go like your band played in bars and stuff. Okay, if you go into a bar that has bands playing and stuff, the attendance isn't what it was before. Even now, okay, people just are not going out. I mean, I'm actually seeing people again wearing masks. Okay, and I won't even go into that. Okay, but they're walking around wearing masks now. So people are a little worried. Um, People really didn't care too much about the mental health. They were more worried about the physical health and not realizing the mental health effects of being locked up and isolated for so long. Um, what are the effects on our bodies when we experience social isolation or loneliness?
I mean, basically, you can feel, the exhaustion. Um, Something that when I mean, I'll share this. When I isolate, something that I've noticed is it's like my thinking starts to kind of veer off into this more self-destructive place. Kind of like catastrophic thinking or all or nothing thinking. It's
Mhm.
never going to this or that. It's like the reality is that everything's not black and white. The world is full of grays. And life is full of grays. So, um, but that's one of the things is just uh, lack of energy, um, loneliness, uh, sometimes destructive thinking, etc.
Addiction.
Yeah.
People
Oh,
start to
absolutely.
become, highly addictive. This stuff. I mean, you're right. If you really want to like clear your head and stuff, meditation. Obviously, just meditate once a day, or even once a week if you have to. Just sit alone in a room with your mind, your thoughts. Heck, there's enough people out there. My wife even teaches meditation. So you can meditate, but don't isolate. I
Yeah.
guess that could be a good slogan. Meditate, don't isolate. Okay, because it actually sounds a good one. And you heard it first, then. But you know, one of the things that happens that shapes that loneliness and isolation is sometimes people that are low income start to feel that they can't afford to go out. I mean, I watch it; it's really great. There's some people that there's a group of people in this place here that go out to eat. They pick a different restaurant every couple of weeks and they go for lunch. Not for dinner.
Yeah.
They go and eat lunch and they travel about 20 miles and stuff. I actually like watching it because I'm new here, so I get to see some restaurants and say, "Hey, okay, I got to write that one down. Okay, we may check that out," because I have a couple of friends that we go out with and stuff. But you know, we have to watch young adults go into loneliness and isolation, and a lot of that might be due to bullying. Really bad times at school. They may have done something embarrassing or may have been embarrassed. Older adults, adults that live alone, people with chronic diseases. So I get the hiccups. People with chronic diseases and disabilities. Okay, immigrants. Okay, individuals who identify as LGBTQ instead of reading each one. Okay, and we will be doing hopefully some shows on that too, because that's part of our mental health. Those people that are LGBTQ have issues they're facing, that bullying type of situation that they're getting from other people. Um, some of the factors that might increase a person at risk for social isolation and loneliness. I mean, what are some of the things that will happen to people that might have to cause them to become socially isolated?
One of the first things that comes to mind is addiction of some kind. Where people will isolate to use. Um, feeling depressed or social anxiety. I mean, there's any number of things that can make the feelings that can make the feelings of depression either amplify or make them worse. So, but addiction's one of the things that definitely comes to my mind when I think of isolation. One of the things that grows out of it.
But one of the things it says here, it says social isolation increases your risk of dementia by 50%, heart disease by 29%, and stroke by 32%. And I imagine some of that is just you're not going to be moving. You're sitting at home. You're not going out. You're probably not going to the gym, as we talked about, going to a health center or something to exercise. You're going to sit at home. You're going to eat a lot. You're going to smoke a lot. And any kind of addictive qualities you have are probably going to come out more and stuff now. So what will be some of the things to increase our social connections?
I mean, I think, making connections with old friends, try to reach out to an old friend once a week or once a month. What's amazing is just, I see relationships that are just completely disconnected. And a lot of times all it really takes is just opening the lines of communication, not always, but sometimes that's all it takes. So I think, something that helped me remain sane during the pandemic was I would pick a time during the day, like in between my appointments or whatever, and I was working from home, and I would just go to Lowe's. I'd drive over, just to get out of the house. I'd go to Lowe's. I wouldn't buy anything. And just, let's look at the bird feed today. I mean, it was nothing spectacular, but it got me out of the house. It changed my environment. And something as simple as that, just running a little errand to get yourself out of the house can make all the difference in the world.
It's funny you say Lowe's because that's like my go-to. Women can go to a mall and go shopping and stuff, but if there's a Lowe's in there, it's like, go ahead, where I'm going to be, and you just can walk around. I don't need to buy anything. Yeah. I'm just there, just walking around, and
it's interesting to look.
Yeah, and having a good thing. One other question I'm going to ask, because we've gone almost 57 minutes. It's amazing because I guess we threw a lot of topics in here at once. But what about how do we get our kids, if we notice that our children are isolating, okay, and they're not going out as much, they're not hanging out with their friends, what do we do to get them more involved in the community? How do we get them partnering, but off their ass and out doing stuff, away from the video games?
I think that supporting them in things that they like to do, whether it's, sports or music, if you can always use things that they're interested in to try and, get them out of the house. But I can't stress enough, simply having open communication with your kids that's paramount. There's no, that is the absolute best thing that you can do. And you have to try to create an environment where your kids are comfortable to talk to you about some things that are uncomfortable, but it could make all the difference in the world, especially, with the types of things that we're talking about.
I've watched a lot of kids. I used to like watching the youth at church. Okay, I know you've been part of, the music departments and stuff. But, that's another thing. If you do go to church, try to get them involved in some of the youth programs. Because they don't want to be with adults. I get that. It's like, that's, corny, my dad and stuff. But you know what? If they're amongst their friends, other people their age, they start a communication with each other.
Yeah.
And there's some great youth pastors and stuff. My brother is one of them in New York. Okay, he's retired from the IRS and everything else, but he spends a lot of time with youth. He's done that his whole life, helping kids, making them go out and do stuff. And it could really be something that turns your child around. Because remember, they're forming in their head what they want to do in life. And if they're sitting there playing, one of the video games or just surfing the web and stuff, they're not really doing anything.
Yeah.
You got to get out, especially when your brain is developing, you got to get out and work that brain. That's really important. So, okay. So we talked a lot today, and there was a lot to take in. And I personally find this more interesting than talking to an author for an hour about their book. Okay, I'm sorry, but this is something, these things really affect our health, and it's universal. So it's not something that, okay, you got to like this book on the paranormal or something like that, or, book on religion. This is something that's covering everything. And all I can tell you, folks, is we're just getting warmed up. Okay. And the next covering weeks will cover topics like self-identity, embracing who you are, walking through the racial and cultural identity, the LGBTQ plus we talked about, how to be happy. We may be doing that one a little sooner because I don't want to be all depressive stuff here. The benefits of helping others. And that might probably be next week's topic. Because over the coming weeks, I plan on trying to bring some people in that are doing that already nationally, which some people might be recognized. And I don't want to talk about who they are until, we get the permission to do it. Now, before we go, I know many of you might have questions about tonight's show. Not being able to make it live, when we're broadcasting live, makes it hard to address these questions. Yeah. Okay, so if you have a question, email it to us. Okay, go to the website, the Your Life Matters podcast. I'll let this run across down the bottom again. Okay, and also there you can sign up for a newsletter. We're going to have a weekly newsletter letting you know, follow-up questions and topics from, let's say, like tonight, and then we'll talk about stuff that's happening on the next show. So you get an idea, and if you even give us an idea for a show, if you like us to cover some topic, we'll gladly go and take care of it. And remember, until then, there's a place where every episode is a journey into the heart of what truly matters: your health, your adventures, and the issues shaping the world today. Remember that your life matters. Dr. Davis, I thank you for joining us tonight. And I thank everyone who has watched that's in the chat room, even though I was the one doing chatting in there. But I know people have been watching because I can see the numbers there. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. And we hope to see you again next Thursday at 8 o'clock.
Thank you for joining us for this week's new episode of the Your Life Matters Show podcast. Please be sure to join us again next week for another great episode with your host, Steve Hodgson, and psychotherapist Dr. Eric L. Davis. Remember, no matter where you are in your journey, you are valuable and important. Take time to cherish yourself and those around you. Never forget, your life matters.